So Facsimile 3 from the Book of Abraham, which Robert Rittner in his JNES article identifies as a standard Egyptian presentation scene, shows from an Egyptological perspective the owner of this papyrus roll, figure 5, as a deified individual who is introduced into the heavenly assembly or council of the gods. And he is introduced into this heavenly assembly by figure 6, Anubis, and then through the sacred hand clasp, Ma'at, Lady Ma'at, who is figure 4, who presents the owner of the papyrus roll at the veil, if you will, through standard Old Testament and Near Eastern veil imagery associated with temple worship, and is presented before Osiris, the god of resurrection and new life, who is enthroned, seated upon the throne as figure 1 in Joseph Smith facsimile. So this wonderful presentation scene from an Egyptian perspective is then taken by the prophet Joseph and given new meaning. A new meaning that specifically connects with Abraham, so that Abraham becomes the enthroned God, figure 1. Reading the prophet's interpretation, Abraham sitting upon Pharaoh's throne by the politeness of the king, and so forth. Well, again, this standard Egyptian presentation scene ultimately derives from ancient Sumeria. And I actually would like to draw attention again, as suggested in the previous presentation, to those cylinder seals where the drama occurs from the Ur-3 time period, which is fascinating because of its deification of the king, the Sumerian king, as figure 1 in the presentation scene. Again, Ur is the city from southern Iraq that the Bible identifies as Abraham's homeland. It's an interesting connection. But in the Ur-3 time period, the deification of kings which takes place ultimately has its roots historically in the traditions forged during the previous Mesopotamian dynasty of Akkad. So, according to legend, an important Semitic official in the city-state of Kish overthrew his former Sumerian master in a palace revolt. And this took place around 2350 BCE. And this Semitic usurper adopted the throne name Sargon, okay, meaning the king is legitimate, something along those lines. And Sargon, the famous Mesopotamian king, proved successful at eventually establishing the Akkadian dynasty that dominated Mesopotamia until Gutian raiders came down and took control. So these military struggles then weakened the Akkad dynasty to a point which allowed for the rise of the city-state of Ur, which effectively established dominion over the country for the third time in Mesopotamian history around 2000 BC or so. So cuneiform tablets from the Akkad dynasty identify the beginning of Mesopotamian deification among the Sargonic kings. So scholars have yet to definitively identify the precise reason for this new theological or political innovation in Ur. But whatever the meaning was, ultimately the kings from the Ur-3 time period became gods themselves and are depicted on the Mesopotamian presentation scenes, which serves as the foundation and the inspiration for the Egyptian drama that is Facsimile 3. Human beings appear as the divine kings, the gods, on the seated throne that Joseph Smith identifies as Abraham as figure 1. Okay, so this is fascinating to consider. So from a Near Eastern perspective, this standard presentation scene that is Facsimile 3 is a temple drama, and it's commonly attested not only in Egyptian iconography and facsimiles, as Robert Rittner explains, but it's commonly attested throughout the ancient Near East. And the most common theme displayed on Mesopotamian cylinder seals is a throne room portrait, in which a worshiper enters the presence of the god with the help of a divine spiritual guide who clasps the worshiper's hand, and then is introduced in the presence of the deity. That's precisely what's taking place in facsimile number 3, and which, again, the Or 3 time period presents as in connection with human deification. Now, in her description of the cylinder seal presentation scene, Irene Winter, who teaches at Harvard, gave us this interpretation, quote, "The approaching individual," now in this case she's talking about Mesopotamian presentations, but again you can think of this in terms of the Egyptian portrayal that takes over this sort of iconography is facsimile number 3. So the approaching individual, she writes, usually wears a simple fringed garment draped over one shoulder, and one arm at least is bent at the elbow, the hand raised almost to the lips in what seems to be a gesture of greeting. Now, that's her statement that she makes regarding this Mesopotamian presentation scene. The scene really is not foreign to the biblical sphere. For example, Psalm 73:23, which presents the psalmist, perhaps a Judite king in this case, making the statement, "I am continually with thee, O God." And I'm giving King James Bible English here, but the statement is, "Thou hast holden me," or grasped me by my right hand. Again, Psalm 73:23. Now that grasping of the right hand is precisely what we see taking place not only in Mesopotamian cylinder seals, but in the temple drama that is facsimile 3, where the deified whore, identified by Rittner in his article, this figure 5, clasps hands with Lady Ma'at and is introduced at the veil before Osiris, the god seated at the throne. Speaking about the biblical motif of the hand clasp in the Psalms, Hans Joachim Kraus, a specialist in this sort of imagery, gives us in his book, The Theology of the Psalms, page 173, this insight, quote, "This, the clasping of the right hand, points to a royal, might we even say messianic," and we'll come back to all of this imagery in another presentation, "procedure. The formula God grasps one by the hand when the king ascends the throne and is inducted into royal office denotes the conferring of privilege and charisma on the king." End of quote.